It's Tom Panos here with Dr. Fred, and we're just going to wait for our mastermind group, those that aren't on holidays, that are going to be watching this live to build up. And the purpose of today's webinar is that we're going to run through 4 questions that have come in, and we're also going to take questions from our attendees. This is a mid catch-up between our face-to-face groups. We're meeting again in May, and we thought we would like to keep the momentum going and make sure that everyone is on track. So, Dr. Fred, whilst this audience is building up, may I say Happy Easter to you in Christchurch.
Try Happy Passover.
Happy Passover. Happy Passover. Sorry.
Chag Sameach. Christos Anesti. Come on.
Christos Anesti, alithnos. So, is this period, Dr. Fred, in your spiritual life, a big period this week that went by?
Yes.
Yeah. And how do you normally spend it?
I'd rather not do this on the call, but we basically have a special meal, which is called by the Christians the Last Supper, but we have a Passover meal where we sit around a table for 5 to 6 hours, recalling the Exodus from Egypt and re-experiencing the Exodus, the plagues, the challenges of evil, rebuilding your life. And everyone at the table is meant to remember what it would be like to be a slave who is becoming free, and appreciating that, and then reaching out to other people who need that transition.
Okay. I'm just waiting for this. And Dr. Fred, the reason I'm asking these questions is I'm buying time as people come online, you know. Some people are on more than others. We've got, I'm just having a look here. Good morning, David. Good to see you. Fantastic. By the way, anyone that's got any questions, you please put them in the question box, or you can actually just put them in the chat box. I'll be checking both. I might actually get things up and running, Dr. Fred. So the first thing I was going to say to you is 4 questions that have come in, and I'll start with the first one. How do you cope in an office where you are trying to be up, but everyone else is down? So, and it, you know, you're trying to be positive, optimistic, motivated. You're trying not to hang around with negativity, but you're in an office environment where people aren't matching your level of mindset. What's your response to that?
I'll start, Tom, but I'd love you to jump in between or at the end. Sure. I believe that most offices are small poppy hives, places where people go to take and to waste time. So that most real estate offices are toxic to anyone who'd like to make a living. So the assumption that the office should be uplifting, tall poppy, dollar productive, everyone on the phone, lead generating, prospecting, listing, negotiating, selling, is a myth for the super achievers. The people we and I work with are the ones who are the super achievers. They have to then see the office as a toxic waste, and their job is to not get involved with the poison. So one would be is to use a boardroom. Another would be is to have an office with a door. Another would be is to set up an office at home, and to realize that most of the offices suck your blood dry, and your job is to stay away. There are some really good offices, and it's like night and day, where people actually go there to make a living and to support each other and to brainstorm and to train and to live train. And that's what it's meant to be. So, rule of thumb, whenever you're in a toxic situation, get out. Doesn't mean you have to change brands or change offices. You may need the branding, but find a place where you can actually do your work and get away from the people who are waiting to die.
Okay. Let me chime in on there, and let me extend on that. Dr. Fred, I think that really good operators create their own environment, and sometimes that's their physical environment. They actually do a lot of their work in places that might not include their office. There's a increasing number of real estate agents that tell me that they now have 3 offices. One is their car, so they make their car conducive to actually do work. One of it is that they create space at home where they make it conducive, where they can spend time in solitude and not have what I call a digital disruption all the time. And then the third one is an office. Now, you may or may not have the choice to create an office in an office, but Dr. Fred, I'd like to touch on, I think a bigger issue is when you have a principal, a proprietor, an owner or director who is, because I actually think a good estate agent is a sought commodity in the marketplace in Australia and New Zealand these days. They're very highly sought after. If you're a good salesperson, good officers are always chasing. Can I ask you, what happens is when you've got a principal, you know, some principals don't seem to get the best version of you. They don't encourage you. They don't support you in training and education. Sometimes they've actually got morals and values that are not aligned to your morals and values. Can I touch on that? What happens is when you've got a principal that really is not someone that inspires you or someone that you like?
Tom, from my point of view, your job is to get out of that place and let him stew in his own juice. For some reason, your staying there supports that toxic. If you have no control, which you don't, you're not going to be able to change the principal. You're not going to threaten him. Your job then is to not be there. Move away to a place where you can make a living. Your job is to prospect, list, negotiate, sell, buy investments, support your family, have your 10 out of 10 days, travel around the world, and do your life. And if the office, which is there presumably to be the wind under your wings, is not doing that job, get out. I have people in toxic marriages, toxic offices, and they stay there as if there's some sort of disloyalty to get away from poison. I mean, it's like amazing to me that people hang in there.
Okay.
If you are the type of principal who is nourishing, uplifting, let people know the kind of office that you would be recruiting to, and then actually do those things.
Yeah. Second question that's come in. What are the most common ways people participate in self-sabotage? How do people do this?
Okay, from my point of view, this is what we call in Yiddish, in Jewish, a klutz kasha. A klutz kasha is a question where even when you get the answer, you don't have an answer. So your job is to always avoid a klutz kasha, which is sort of a dumb question. Now, there's no really dumb questions, but let me reframe it to you. First of all, it makes no difference what other people do. The first view is that you are a unique fingerprint. And if all 10 people in the room are doing something that's a bit strange, you can just get out of the way. Let them do it. You're not going to change them. You don't have a vote on appropriate behavior beyond prospect, list, negotiate, sell, keep a deal together. So people participate in self-sabotage when they actually take other people's opinions as anything but them talking to themselves. So if they said it's too hard, the market is slow, you'll never get any deals, your closing is not good enough, they're talking to themselves out loud, and your job is to not listen because their point of view is none of your business. If you're talking to Tom Panos or to me or a trainer or a mentor, and we point out that you're not prospecting or you're doing things like getting drunk every night or using cocaine so much that you can't prospect, we can then confront you and point out that would be a form of self-sabotage. So the biggest self-sabotage has to do, from my point of view, with disowning the subpersonalities within you that help you make a living or make a life. So inside every person, as I teach, this is a Carl Jung concept, there are 70 or more people, and the art is which of those 70 personalities, the business person, the party boy, the athlete, the son, the mother, the guilty person, the closer, the wealth accumulator, which one is on channel 37 when you're doing business? Self-sabotage is when you are on channel 37 at business and you're not using the subpersonalities that get business over the line, because the purpose of business is to make a living. So part of what happens then is self-sabotage is when you disown your soul, your inner business partner, and you haven't trained your soul to work with you to stay focused to your ideal day, your ideal week, your ideal month in writing. Self-sabotage comes when you don't write in advance 30 or more ideal days, hour by hour, and then tick the boxes of each hour and stick with it. So that if someone or something would distract you from it, your job is to not let them steal your soul or your time. So if you have a written plan, ideally going along, what the other people in the office do or don't do is none of your business. If they're too noisy, get a quieter place. But the fact is, you need to find out your goals, your hopes, your dreams, your purpose in being there, your ability to stay focused on Channel 37. And whatever they're doing is none of your business unless they're stealing from you. Over to you, Tom.
I'm hoping, Dr. Fred, it's been close to 12 months that the group has been working together, or say 9, 10 months. And I'm hoping that a lot of our members have been able to get a lot better at not making other people's comments their business. I'm hoping that they've been able to do it. If there is people that are watching this now, whether it's on replay or live, that still find it very challenging and they personalize comments from people in the office or, you know, let's call it friends, family, what are some of the things that you would say to them?
First of all, you don't ask other people's opinion unless you want to hear it. You certainly wouldn't ask anyone's opinion on how to make a living who's not making significantly more money than you.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't ask people their advice unless they're a mentor or a trained person. Most people have opinions, and the opinions are untutored, uneducated, and just their opinions, like everyone has a nose and 2 ears. So the first rule of thumb is don't ask people who don't know anything what you want, and realize the source. So if you want information on how to do real estate, go to the real estate gym. That would be a source of income, or work with some of the coaches and trainers who specialize it, or work in a brand that encourages wealth creation and doing it right, scripts, dialogues, closing, objections, and has people working all the time dollar productive. So part one is to allow your mother or your cousin or your uncle who doesn't know anything about anything to advise you is like stupid. Be nice to them, buy them a pizza, go there for the holidays, and don't ever let them discuss your business with them unless they're making significantly more money and they're willing to teach you how to do it.
Okay, Dr. Fred, that's gold. And I want to just touch on that. I heard a beautiful line the other day. Wall Street is the only place where people in Rolls Royces drive in to get advice from people that have taken the training.
Yes.
And I thought that was gold.
Yes.
And I think to myself, you made a very valid point. Don't look at what is said, look at who the person is saying it. And that's it's a very important thing.
And what they've achieved. It doesn't mean they can't have an opinion, but for you to ask their opinion, if they don't make a living, it's like, why would you ask them business advice?
Correct. So you wouldn't ask an overweight personal trainer on advice on getting fit.
Wouldn't ask him anything at all. He would tell you that he's out of control and he doesn't have any internal structure. So I wouldn't ask him anything at all except please leave.
Okay. So I want to move on to the next question.
Okay.
How to overcome when you have great ideas. So you get a great idea and people say you can't do that or it won't work.
Right.
How do you do that? I mean, and having said that, Dr. Fred, if the person that says it probably won't work, I mean, moving on from question 2, which is sometimes you will get advice coming from a reliable source, from someone that has walked that path, that may have intel and intelligence that can actually give you constructive feedback. But
I agree.
Yeah, but there are other times when someone's going to say things from their own construction of the world which and they don't have a monopoly on the truth. So what's your response? How do you overcome it when you've got a great idea and people say it's not going to work? Don't waste your time.
I believe we work as clubs and tribes. What we've set up, the group that you and I have been running, is a mastermind group. So in that group, you can get advice from people who are same-minded and who are striving, some at different levels, but we have a common denominator. So I believe that you have to assemble a tribe or a mastermind in the external world that you would use as an advisory board. So you could have an advisory board for medicine, for instance, so that if you have a problem with cancer or heart attack, you would ideally get annual checkups, and you'd have a group of people who would advise you on your medical condition. You would have an advisor for legal things to make sure your contracts are right. So you pull these advisory groups together. You would have an advisor for fitness who would work, depending on your level of fitness, or if you're preparing for a marathon or an Ironman, who would help you upgrade your skills, and you trust them because you built a long relationship. So when novel experiences come up in this line, i.e. I have a new symptom, you go to your medical people and you would get advice. In business, what happens is that you need to surround yourself with what I would call people who know what they're talking about for the purpose at hand. So I would assume that most people who are doing well in a real estate office would find that most of their colleagues would prefer that they got run over by a bus than they made another $1 million, that they're really not your fans, they're really your competitors, and they wouldn't mind if you died.
Yeah.
The presumption that they would get your business. So to ask them advice, they're going to give you advice to discourage you. I'm asking you that if you have different kinds of ideas, find a mastermind, find a peer partnership, find people who will challenge you and help you think through what you have in mind and support you. Because I believe those inspirations are what make life purposeful. That's where your dreams come from. That's where your goals come from. And a lot of them may not work, but the process of interacting with well-meaning people who are trained and who have your interest as part of what their concern is, that they're there for you. They're not just expressing a projection of their own craziness. So that this kind of a group, which is ongoing, you can bring issues to help you sort out where you're going. So the key is you're going to have lots of these ideas. How can you sort them through with well-meaning people who will not put you down, will encourage you, and also point out if they think you're off the deep end, but treat it as their opinion rather than speaking God's truth. So it would sound like this. I just heard what you said, Mr. Musk. I don't believe you can get a rocket to the moon. I really appreciate your courage and your interest in it. But from my perspective, I don't see how you can do it. Good on you. Good luck. I'll keep in touch. Let me know what happens. Right. So I would like you to have people who would applaud and be the wind under your wings and also share their point of view. They may also say, look, I also know somebody in the rocket business, and you might want to talk to them. The Russians have some really good rockets. You know, you can network around that, even though you don't believe it's possible. So for some reason, we call social confirmation when other people do wear the right shoes, say the same things, go to the right restaurant, that social confirmation is a way of validating something. And for me, social confirmation is a bunch of chooks picking apart another chook. So it's really a quagmire, because the fact that they like a particular brand or like a particular thing says nothing about if it's any good. It just says that a bunch of chooks are doing the same thing. When everyone is doing the same thing, I get really nervous, because that means nobody knows what they're doing. What I would like the individual to do is to learn to meditate and find out if his soul is in line with his project, to meditate and bring forth other advisors from inner mastermind, his scientist, his person who would help him in the next level, and then to take some of these ideas to an outer mastermind of people who are right thinkers, depending on the area. It could be business, could be investment, it could be anything. And then to take their inner mastermind to their outer mastermind and to brainstorm it, and then make a choice. Even if it doesn't work, you'll have an amazingly good adventure if it's important to them.
Okay, this social confirmation, this social confirmation's an interesting one, Dr. Fred, in the world of social media now, because I think that a lot of people have got this addiction to keep checking on how many likes they have on Facebook or Instagram, how many people, like they've said something and they've got this, you know, need and addiction to get social confirmation. So I agree wholeheartedly with this concept of social confirmation. What I want, but you're also saying to me that get the right people around you, and not everyone is the right person.
Most are not the right people. You have to choose. If you go to a doctor, there's only 1 in 100 who's competent. Most of them belong in jail. So you have to do this not when you're in the ambulance going to the hospital. You have to do it and set up these groups that can aid you in your life. People are not individuals. They live in collectives. But most of the collectives are by accident or they're on television. So you adopt a toxic collective, which then poisons you, rather than design a collective that will inspire you.
Okay, so this advisory group, just off the top of your head, the people you're saying, a medical person, a financial person,
legal,
a legal person,
beloveds.
Elaborate on beloveds. You mean?
Beloved, well, having family and having a tribe where you celebrate holidays, you go on trips together, you celebrate special occasions together, even the funeral of the way you went today. And so that would be it. So I start to think in terms of different aspects of your life. I have a tribe for my Mercedes to getting it fixed. I have a dentist that I use for that aspect of medical. I have a travel agent who helps me with travel. I have an electronic techno person who helps me with all of my computer stuff. I have a website designer and help. These are all tribes of people that I carefully select to help me in arenas that I don't have skill in.
Versus you having to source a different person each time you need something.
When you don't know anything about them. I have a history with my techie. I've had 15 years. With my Susie in my office, 18 years. Okay, with Victoria, 35 years. In other words, these are long-term relationships that can then help me make new choices.
Okay, Dr. Fred, speak closer to that microphone. You just came a little bit quieter then, but that's all it was. Perfect, back into perfect. Dr. Fred, let's move on to another question. How to arrange your day when you do everything textbook? Wake up at 5 a.m., write down what you're grateful for, physical training, write your to-do list, then walk in the office and distractions take over and your day is in disarray.
Good. So this person who knows how to start doesn't know how to stay focused.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not naughty. It's another skill base. When I was training kids for bar mitzvah at age 13, I used to have kids. I've trained them for 2 years to get up and read in Hebrew. These are English-speaking kids. And we would get them in front and they would be very nervous because they're going to be talking to 300 or 400 adults. And so when we got them up on stage during rehearsals, we would throw spitballs at them, tickle them, yell at them while they were giving their talk, so that whatever we did, we couldn't distract them. And until we could get them through a non-distract period, they weren't ready, even though they knew their stuff. So for this person who goes into the office, he has to master non-distraction. One way is what I call geographical. He could be at home and he won't be distracted. 2, he could have a few peers in the office that he can trust, his tribe in the office, and just hang out with them and partition off either with doors or with time so that he's not around people who would distract him. The people who are distractors are thieves. They're stealing his livelihood and his time, and he's seeing it as like a victim rather than becoming indignant, sorry about that, and pissed off but that somebody's stealing from him. They're stealing his attention and his time. He's talking like a victim. They steal my time, woo woo, rather than get the hell out of here. Get a water pistol, punch him in the mouth, or find a place where you will not be interviewed. It would be helpful if you could learn to focus even with distraction, like I did with the bar mitzvah kids. Those kids went on to become class presidents, the football team, because they could focus and stay focused even when distracted.
Okay. Um, and Dr. Fred, I mean, I see this question that came in, I see it a lot in the real estate gym where people have, everything's right. They have the right intention, and then they go in and disarray happens. And I'll just add.
Disarray doesn't happen. Disarray is around us all the time. They allow it to throw them off center.
Yeah.
They become victim of disarray rather than hero. That doesn't allow disarray. I don't have disarray. You don't have disarray.
No, but sometimes, Dr. Fred, I notice that and you've basically said it, only you can create permission for that disarray to enter your life. But a lot of the times, people are actually indulging and participating in behavior. And there's this term I like to use now, which is called attention residue. And that is every time you give yourself, you give attention to something, what actually happens is what's left is part of your attention, and you only have a certain amount of calories that you can use per day. And I think some of that attention happens on screens. People go onto a computer screen and they create this digital dementia where they give their certain amount of energy, whether it's social media or they spend time looking at a website, even realestate.com or domain. A lot of the times they're sitting on there and they get carried away and they move away from the thing that they should be doing, which is, let's assume that those 2 hours that we're supposed to spend prospecting, finding people to do business with. So I think good people, Dr. Fred, have got this ability, and I can't remember the term that you use, but they create a bubble where this bubble is an environment where they have a total bubble of control, and they're able to work alone on their projects and not let these external things come in. You actually may have covered it in this mastermind group. I know you've covered it with the work that you did with me in 2006 to 2008, where you say that you create this physical bubble around you to stop distractions going in.
Kinesphere.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, you create an energy field that prevents toxic energy from distracting you. So ideally, if you do it properly, someone could yell at you. Like when I used to go to court and be an expert witness, I would put the critosphere around me and I would be cross-examined, and I would basically hear the guy saying stupid things and trying to trap me, and I would giggle because it didn't get to me. It was like, yeah, I can see your mouth moving, but you're really an idiot. Your mother should see you. Or, you have a small penis problem, mister. I didn't say that out loud, but I'm just sitting there waiting, and then I would answer my question where his intensity didn't get to me. It blocked out the energy. Okay, you can do that. So that's called shielding, and that's living within a bubble. There's something more than that, Tom. You need to just
closer to the mic, Dr. Fred.
Yes, I'm sorry. More than that is, one, your personal protection. But I want to give you some other metaphors. This same person who gets distracted at work, if he was boarding a flight to go to Europe with his family and somebody did the same thing, would he not get on the flight and sit and talk with them?
Gosh.
Okay, if he was in an automobile accident and his family was wounded, would he have a chat with these people, or would he get an ambulance and police?
Okay. Get an ambulance and police.
Right. So that you'll find that it's selective. Only in the certain environments do they give away their focus. If they were at a listing appointment and this person said, hey, I want to tell you about my date, forget the listing appointment, come and talk with me, which would they do? They would be able to hold on to. So they need how to stay focused in an environment which they can control. If they go to a boardroom, they'll control it. If they put up signs and say to anyone who disrupts them, please don't bother me, I'm making a living, you're stealing my time. I'll meet you at midnight or something in the pub, but don't bother me during dollar productive time. You could talk to people and treat them like thieves if they ignore you. If the whole office is toxic, which most are, then they have to be able to find either a corner where that isn't, where you can do work and still be okay, and where people don't hate you for making a living because they're saying the market is slow and you're getting one after another because you're doing dollar productive behavior. You're going to have to be able to physically create an environment, tribally surround yourself with people on your same team, and find out where your strength, where you can stay focused, and bring some of that skill. Like at a listing appointment, you wouldn't get distracted. Use that same skill and treat prospecting as important, if not more important.
I've got to say, Dr. Fred, whenever I've had to do project work where I've got to be in total solitude and not have family, friends, work, people interrupt me, believe it or not, the environment I find most conducive is going to the University of Sydney Library. It's quiet. Everyone is sort of doing their own thing and no one comes to you.
And it works. A lot of people use Starbucks, believe it or not, because it's unless they're there to pick up a date, they can really just sit, have a coffee, and be in another kind of environment. Sadly, most offices are not that environment. And they should be there to be dollar productive. That's what you're in the office for. And the leadership has to come from the owner or from the managers, and that's where the problem is. However, you don't have to participate in their craziness. You find another place.
Dr. Fred, I can't help it, but I notice a lot of real estate agents feel guilt if they're not doing their work in their office. They've got this belief that, if I'm not in the office, I'm not really working. What's your response to that?
This is a belief. Guilt is a subpersonality. Remember we said there are 70 of them. You have guilt coming into your business channel when you have the rules that you set up at age 4 or 5. Remember, most people are operating with belief structures from age 4 or 5. Like you share all your toys like you did in kindergarten, and you shouldn't make too much money, you don't want to be outstanding, you want to fit in, people should like you. All of these basic rules of being mediocre are shared. So whenever you find, from my point of view, a rule like I feel guilty when I'm not in the office, I would want you then to erase that belief and replace it as I feel guilty when I'm not dollar productive 6 hours a day. If I don't make 150 to 200 connects, I feel guilty. I feel guilty if I don't take 4 holidays a year. I feel guilty if I don't let my beloved know that I love them every day. I feel guilty if I don't buy 1 investment property every year. So we can take guilt, erase it in relationship to this child, like you have to fit into kindergarten, and relate it to a business. It's a business to make a living. And so we can reallocate guilt for dysfunctional behavior. That's what it's meant to be. You should feel guilty if you're eating poison. You should feel guilty if you're drunk driving. Yeah, but you shouldn't feel guilty being fit, eating right, making money, taking care of your family, doing holidays, doing charitable work. Why should you feel guilty being with a bunch of chooks who are avoiding making a living?
And you definitely shouldn't be feeling guilty making your prospecting calls from your home office or from your car office if you're doing those.
The problem is they're not. And a lot of people make the excuse, this is their way out, that if the office were nicer, I'd make more calls. That's nonsense. You make the calls and the office will get nicer. You won't even know it's there because if you make 150, 200 calls, even in this market, you'll have so many listings, you don't have time to talk with these people who are losers and who are going out of business.
All right. Dr. Fred, we've got about 10 minutes left. Off camera, when I started, I brought up the subject of that billionaire who has just lost 3 of his 4 kids in the massacre in Sri Lanka at the hotels and the churches over the Easter period. And I wanted to bring up this, not specifically advice for that billionaire, but it's got a lot to do with what you call the Black Swan. When tragedy strikes, what happens next? And I did have one of my clients who does more than 200 genuine sales a year. I mean, I've counted individually on realestate.com. And in a matter of a week, he had, in a matter of 14 days, he had 2 major black swans, 2 major tragedies, the 2 diagnoses, one of his mother and one of his spouse with major illnesses that may have permanent consequences. How does one cope? How does one cope when these things happen?
You're asking a very powerful question. First of all, everyone has black swans. They may not always notice it. A black swan is something that turns things on your ear, things that you just didn't anticipate. Could be medical issues, could be an automobile accident, it could be an embezzlement, it could be anything that totally turns your world upside down. Even the introduction of the internet from 20 years ago and the introduction of the cell phone are a form of black swan. They're not all negative. They're things that require you to reorganize your whole way of thinking. So part of growing up is you learn how to deal with evil, like what's happening with Donald Trump, learning to come to terms with what we have, a psychopath in the White House, and realize that we have no control there. So there'll be whole areas that you have no control, and then something happens like a black swan, and it throws you for a loop, and then you have to get through it. How long does it take? Everyone is different. So you can have a death, you can have an illness, I've had kids run over in the crosswalk by drunks, and then the drunk is released because they didn't serve the right paperwork. And then the family, this was a college professor and his wife that had a divorce from that because their only child, and they were past childbearing age, was killed at age 5, going to kindergarten in a crosswalk by a drunk. All of these energized black swans can throw you for a loop. And then there are what you do about it. First of all, developing resilience is part of what you need to do. And believe it or not, learning how to deal with objections, dealing with negotiation are all resilience builders. But I would also like you to daydream of what are your worst fears and build up resilience for your worst fears. For instance, in a medical situation, what can this young man do? He's going to affect his production radically. It could be that he'll start drinking or using cocaine with his mates so he numbs out. It could be that he will fall apart, or it could be he can go and sell 300 next year because he doesn't want to face what's going on at home. That he'll provide for them but can't emotionally deal with it. There are different situations. So one, everyone gets the opportunity to be challenged. From my point of view, as in the Bible, the nature of your challenges make you into who you are. That if you have no challenges, you don't develop muscles, you don't develop thick skin, you don't develop the ability of resilience. All you do is you're a mushpot waiting for anything to happen. So part of the work I do with people is to teach them to be prepared for evil and black swans, and to have in place, what are you going to do when a black swan comes to you every 5 years? Let's choose a medical one, let's choose an embezzlement one, let's choose a violation of friendship one, and let's practice mastering the black swans that other people have, real cases, and see in part how you'll deal with it. You'll never know until you get hit in the head. One of the boxers, I was told, went back I forget his name, but he's a very famous boxer, went back at age 35 into the ring. He was having a comeback, and he was in great shape, and he was going to win, and he lost. And somebody interviewed him. He said, how come you were going to win? You're going to win, and then you lost. He said, everything was fine until someone hit me in the face and knocked me silly. I didn't
Mike Tyson. That's Mike Tyson.
So that really happened so that you can have clear intention, but you can't deal with all the black swans. That one was a high probability one. Okay, so what we're dealing with is then learning resilience and seeing it in the Bible. Only the people who are tested are the ones beloved of God. Let me say that again. That when you're tested by life, usually it's within your capacity or you can stretch to it. And in that stretching, it's a form of blessing to make you better for what you need to deal with in life. That you didn't.
Are you suggesting, Dr. Fred, you'll never be given a problem you can't handle?
If you're willing to be that kind of person, as I said, a hero. Many people, when they have a problem they can't handle, become victims, they whinge, they will go on welfare, they do all kinds of things. Other people, when they have a problem, they say, what am I going to learn from this? How can I do better next time? And they have what I call a hero's mentality for resilience. They welcome this type of challenge to get to the next level. They take challenges in work. They take investment challenges. They take business challenges. They take travel challenges to build up their resilience. So in the small poppy world, which is a whole mindset, you watch television, you text, and you wait to die. And then you die between 75 and 80 because the government doesn't want to pay you superannuation. And I would love you to see that that's one state of reality. We're teaching tall poppy reality, which is that when you are challenged by a Black Swan, I want you to be stronger as a result of it. And I'm asking you to look for Black Swans. We call them stretch goals that you can take on so you can be better next year. Because without the challenges, you don't grow.
Okay, so on the one hand, you're saying factor in and get prepared for a Black Swan, become resilient.
Every 5 years.
Yeah, but isn't that also sort of saying anticipating something negative to happen?
Yes. What's wrong with that? It happens. Evil in the world. Look what happened in America when they stole the country. A bunch of pirates and bye-bye gangs are running the country. So if you are naive and don't expect it, like Neville Chamberlain, that be nice to Hitler and he'll be nice to us, you have to come to terms with evil. So some things are not pleasant will happen. I want you to master that so they don't bowl you over. I want you to get stronger and not be that person, but not have it take you over either.
Okay. Dr. Fred, we're pretty much up on time. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we meet up with the group next month?
I'll go first, but I want you to go as well.
Okay.
We will be meeting for the 4th time. It'll be the end of a cycle. And it's possible that you will have questions you've wanted to ask that you haven't asked. Especially for those of you who are not continuing in any way, you'll be cutting off from a tribe that has continuous growth as a core pattern. We've created a mastermind group that asks you to ask the tough questions of yourself, and like we're doing here,
yeah,
to not let the opportunity go by just sitting like a vegetable waiting for the class to end. But to put what questions you have, where do you want to be, what your destiny is. I'm going to be working particularly on finding out your why, finding out your destiny, and learning how to figure that out. We'll do that at our next meeting. Tom, over to you.
So on that issue, Dr. Fred, would you like those questions to be brought to the group on May 9th and 10th, or would you like those questions sent prior to the group?
Either way is fine. I'd like to be able to write them on the board at the front of the room if they have them, with their name next to them so we can deal with them. I believe that everyone in the room, if I got to poke a little bit with them without embarrassing them, would have 50 or more really major issues. Like, why is my marriage so boring? Like, I'm wondering if my kid has Asperger's. Like, my parents seem to be going downhill. Is there anything I should be doing for them? Like, what's going to happen with the market going down? Will I be bankrupt? Will my wife leave me if I can't afford this lifestyle we've developed? All of these things have to be hovering in different people's minds.
Okay. Look, I'll just finish on this point. And this is, please understand, I'm not judging, I'm simply reporting. Reporting one of the things that I see, and that is those of you that aren't working with a one-on-one coach on an ongoing basis, but actually are coming into the group every 3 months, I think are lacking one of the important ingredients of success, and that is accountability. Accountability at least till something becomes habitual, you know? And that accountability is either not happening because your peer partner is not stretching you, your peer partner is not meeting their obligations, or you are not meeting your obligations. And I just want to reconfirm that one of the big values of the group is that you actually do have the right people. Like we talked about it on this webinar, that sometimes you've got the wrong people. There's a saying, everyone wants to see you do good till you're better than them. At least in our group here, we've got people that are cheerleaders, are supporters, are fans, that deep down want you to do good. And we're very fortunate because we're in a situation that there is very few people in this group, Dr. Fred, that have a direct competitor that they work against every day, you know? So that's erased out of the context. So what I'd like to say is that if your issue is that you're not doing some of you. Let's assume you don't have the 30 ideal days. What I'd like you to do is maybe spend the next few days. This is a good week. Anzac Day means that it falls on Thursday. This is a good week to actually sit there and write out your 30 ideal days, and then reconnect with your peer partner, or find a peer partner, or just find someone, or get in touch with you. Like Dr. Fred, you're still doing one-on-ones with certain people in the group?
Yes, I am. I don't have any free hours, but we can work on the telephone.
Okay, so find another person that's going to keep you accountable till these behaviours become hardwired and habitual. I would say that, and I would say that, you know, come there on Thursday and Friday on May 9th and 10th, I think off the top of my head. Come there thinking to yourself, there is no dumb thought or question that you shouldn't bring, because maybe that's the thing. There's a saying, what you resist will persist, what you'll befriend, you'll transcend. Bring it to the surface.
Okay, Mr. Tom. We're ready.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Fred, I look forward to seeing you. I'm very pleased to hear that there is very positive progress and a positive prognosis for Victoria,
yes,
and that she's on the final stretch of her treatments.
Yep, she'll be there as well.
She'll be there as well. Fantastic. And she would have completed treatment by then, correct?
First stage, yes, the radiation.
Okay. All right, Dr. Fred. Susan, we're signing off. This is being recorded and will be sent to everyone that's on the call, and also to those that aren't on the call, you'll also receive an email of this. So on that basis, Dr. Fred, I'll sign off. Goodbye from Sydney.
Goodbye from Christchurch.
Thank you.
Adios.